Well, it's going to be 50 degrees tomorrow. All right, we're at Daniel chapter 6, verse 9. Okay. Daniel 6 and 10. Now, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his widow's windows began to open in his chamber toward Jerusalem. He kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he did aforetime. Now, the one thing that we need to see is that Yeshaya's law is before the law comes before the laws of any land. Maybe it wasn't that many people on in the first place. Okay. So one thing that we have to understand is that the Shariah's laws become before any law does. The law of the land puts you in a position of sinning against Yeshaya. If you disobey the law, if you disobey the law of the land and you keep Yeshaya's law, then that's what you should do. And the only way to disobey the law of the land is if it contradicts against what Yeshaya is saying. That's the only way. That's the only reason why you would disobey the law of the land, is that this particular law contradicts or it comes against what Yeshaya established. Daniel's prayer towards Yeshaya's temple conformed to Solomon's prayer, and the people, that's what they would do. The 3 times prayer was talked about in Psalms 55, where it says praying 3 times a day. We have to be like Daniel and do what is right by all costs. He knew that this decree went out. If he had a title like he knew that this decree went out. But he decided that he must worship Yeshaya first. He prayed 3 times a day. Also, this verse talks about the humbleness of Daniel and how he was humble. He kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day. He was 80 years old, kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, pointed towards Jerusalem, showing his loyalty towards Yeshaya. Verse 11, and these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. Before they knew it, they were just watching. And that's what people do. People are heathen. They will sit back and you sit there and you declare, oh, yes, Yeshaya, this, or My God, I follow the Bible, and you better believe that they're watching and they're waiting to catch you doing something so they can rebuke you or talk about how a hypocrite you are. In this case, they knew that Daniel was going to be praying. They knew that Daniel was going to be doing whatever he does with Yashaya. And they waited and they saw him. Verse 12. Then they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree. Hast thou not signed a decree that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, save of thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? And the king answered and said, the thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. So see, they went to the king and they didn't say, well, Daniel has broke this. They went to the king, and the first thing that they said, didn't we make a law about any man that make a petition within 30 days, they don't come to you, that they should be thrown in the lion's den? Any man that goes to pray and they don't ask you within the 30 days, that they should be thrown in the lion's den? And Darius, not having any understanding on what's going on, is, you know what? It is true, because the pride rose up. I remember that. Yes, according to the law. And yes, it should not be altered, and it won't be altered. This has been the purpose of the decree in the first place, to get rid of Daniel. They didn't care about people worshiping gods or anything like that. They didn't care about that.
And that's why I don't. Why Daniel? I mean, why King Darius just didn't say, like, why do we need this? Like, when they first brought it to him, if he was not dealing in his flesh, or if he was not using, if he was using discernment, he would be like, why bring this to me?
Well, because he's a king.
Right. And
you don't care.
All worldly kings have
he
a
doesn't
little
care. Right. He had
pride, a little bit.
A lot of pride. There ain't no little. He had a lot of pride, a lot of machismo, and and they knew it, because they played "Old King Darius live forever."
Yeah, they got it.
You let a group of men come in front of you and say, "Old King, old Queen live forever." That's right.
Well, we had a guy at the deliverance ministry we started off at. And this guy was in his 30s. And he would always tell Shepherd, like, yeah, that was a good teaching and this and that. Now, this guy was at least, 30, The dark guy. The one was beating the guy in the back that time. What was his name?
I don't remember. He was about 30. He was
in his 30s.
Yeah.
But come to find out, he was trying to butter Shepherd up, because at the time he was trying to marry our 17-year-old daughter. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, boy, that ain't happening. You need to go on with that. You can't play that here.
Right.
Yeah, it ain't happening. But he did. He tried to use flattery. He did.
Verse 13 said, then answered they and said before the king, that Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regardeth not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but maketh his petition 3 times a day. Right? So first of all, they insult Daniel. That Daniel. So they insult him there. Then they reminded him of how low he was by saying the children of the captivity of Judah, to let the king know that Daniel is not worthy of what you make him worthy to be. He's a child of the captivity of the people of Judah. And it says, he doesn't regard you. He doesn't regard you. You made this decree, but he still makes a petition. Not once, not twice, but 3 times a day.
They was watching him. They was trying to catch him doing something.
No, the king wouldn't accept this accusation if he only came from one person.
Mm-hmm.
But this came from several people. Remember the presidents, counselors, leaders. It came from a group of people. There's nothing that he could do. He even said that this is a law that which altereth not. They were accusing Daniel of ignoring the decree of the king. Not once, but they made known. They told him 3 times a day. So they're sitting out there just watching.
And he was turned towards Jerusalem at that.
Right. They're sitting there watching.
Mm-hmm.
They had a stakeout. Now, at this point, Daniel lived. Yeah, stakeout. At this point, Daniel lived over 60 years in Babylon. At this point, he had lived there 60 years. His loyalty was well known. But in spite of the loyalty, his consistent faithfulness to Yashaya was a threat, was a big threat. Verse 14 says, then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased with himself and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, and he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. So, of course, I've already said that Darius loved Daniel. King Darius loved Daniel. So he tried to find a way, a loophole on not throwing Daniel in the lion's den. Now he realizes that he was trapped. He was tricked. He was bamboozled. He was led astray. He had gone from being a king to a fool in one day.
They used it.
He was angry at himself for signing this into law. He didn't immediately do this terrible thing. His hope was there was some way out of this. He was the king. There's some way, there has to be some way out of this. Let this be a lesson learned. Quick decisions will always come back and get you in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Making quick and hasty decisions.
And making them according to feeding your flesh.
Right. Making quick and hasty decisions will come back on you. So out of this chapter, we have thus far we have hopefully learned that Yeshaya's law is preeminent above the law of the land, and you do not break the law of the land just by breaking the law of the land. If the law of the land comes against what the laws of Yeshaya are, you break the law of the land. You don't break the law of Yeshaya. So that's the first thing that we learned. The second thing that we learned in this chapter, the second thing that we learned is that you don't make quick and hasty decisions. You just don't jump into anything. Okay. Verse 16. Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. No, let's go up to verse 15. Verse 15. Then these men assembled unto the king and said unto the king, Know, O king, now, O king,
Oh, it's back. It may have just been mine. You check yours. One moment, please. Okay.
Now, O king. No. Verse 15. Now these men assembled unto the king and said unto the king, Now, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians is that no decree nor statute which the king established may be changed. So these men are telling King Darius, you don't have a choice. This law has been signed. You don't have a choice.
You can't break it.
You cannot break it. Verse 16, then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee.
Wow.
Darius tell Daniel that Yashaya would save him.
Have faith.
This was more like a prayer that Darius was saying as Daniel was being thrown into the lion's den. He didn't want harm to come to Daniel, but he was trapped.
Mm-hmm.
The king threw Daniel into the dens. Now, this was an underground pit. It was a hole. The hole from the top, they would drop food into the pit. And then a door at the foot of the ramp, where the lions would enter into this big pit. Okay. So the lions would be housed somewhere. They would open up where the lions are, and they would come down this ramp, and they would be here, and there's a hole at the top. That's where they would drop the food down to feed the lions. So that's when they dropped Daniel in. Verse 17, and a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. So that's the stone that was put on the mouth. The signet is his ring. So the king would press his signet into the wax, and it would seal it. Now, Daniel 6 and 17, who does that remind you of? Daniel 6 and 17, who does that remind you of?
Say it right. Be confident in your answer. You say shame too?
Yeah, it was Yashaya in the tomb. Really? It was Yashaya in the tomb. Yashaya, when they placed the stone on the tomb, Daniel, they placed the stone, even though it was in a pit, over the lion's den. Now, Daniel was in the lion's den, so now it looks like there's no way out.
Right.
In fact, there was no way out. Verse 18. Then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. Neither were instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. So he was troubled. He did not go to sleep. He did the thoughtless act. He did the act of signing this thing into decree, into law, without even thinking about it. He was troubled. He fasted. Kings normally had the best food and the best drink at their disposal.
Best of everything. Yeah.
Best of everything. This night, Daniel didn't want none of it. None of it. He didn't want. They would play soft music to put the king to sleep. He didn't want that either. He didn't want none of it. He could not sleep. And he wanted to make sure that Yashaya saved Daniel. Yes.
Do you think King Darius felt some type of guilt for what happened?
What?
Do you think King Darius felt some kind of guilt for what happened with Daniel?
This is what he's going through.
That's why he can't sleep. That's
We've
why
been
he's
reading
fasting.
this. Right. Okay. Daniel, but had he not operated in pride, this would, well, no, it still would have happened. Daniel 6:19 says, Then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste unto the den of lions. The very early morning. And this is why I say this reminds of Yashaya, because very early in the morning, the women went to the tomb of Yashaya. Darius went to the tomb the very early in the morning. He wanted to go see for himself. Verse 20, and when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lion? Darius believed that Yashaya could save him. But physically, he thought in the physical, that would kind of be impossible. He knew spiritually, yes, it can happen. Physically, it may not happen. It reminds us of the story in the New Testament when the man came to Yashaya and said to heal his son, and he said, I believe, but help me with my disbelief or unbelief. Help me with my unbelief.
In the New Testament?
Yeah, with Yashaya.
Oh.
When the man came to Yashaya to heal his boy.
Of leprosy.
And then, he said, I believe, help me with mine unbelief. And it's the same thing with Daniel. I'm sorry, same thing with Darius. He believed spiritually. Physically, there was, I don't know about that. So it's the same thing. He wants to believe. But under these circumstances, no one has ever been dropped in a lion's den and walked out. It just hasn't happened. So he's crying out to Daniel in hopes that Daniel would answer. Verse 21 says, Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. And that had to be the most sweetest sound Darius ever heard.
I'd be like, who is that? Because, the people who tricked him said to live forever too. So I wouldn't have believed that just yet. I'm like, who said that?
No, he knew it was Daniel.
Yeah.
So he knew it was Daniel.
Yeah, they knew who they locked in there.
So the Daniel said, O king, live forever. Daniel was showing that he was not angry with Darius at this point. Verse 22 says, My God hath sent his angel and have shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, for so much as before him innocent innocency was found in me. And also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. So look at what he's saying. Daniel wasn't guilty against sin, against Yeshaya, or against Darius.
Now,
And that's what Daniel is saying.
Now we know that he did not sin against Yeshaya,
Mm-hmm.
but he did go against the decree that.
Why do you think Daniel said that?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm.
Oh, go ahead.
So that's what I was saying. Why is it that even though it was put in a 30-day law,
Mm-hmm.
and clearly Daniel did not keep it,
Right.
so how is it that he did not sin against
Darius?
Darius?
Because Darius didn't create the law. And Daniel knew Darius did not create the law. He knew it.
Man, y'all weren't ready for that.
Darius was a believer of Yeshaya.
Man.
But even being a believer in Shia, we have fleshly moments. And Darius had a fleshly moment. When they came, "Oh, King, live forever." He had a fleshly moment. And we all have fleshly moments. So this is another lesson that this chapter has given us. Even though we have our fleshly moments, and we may stumble sometimes, we must quickly recover and come back to Yeshua.
So at some point, King Darius repented. Let's think about it. He fasted. He prayed.
Right. That night.
Yeshaya, I'm sorry.
That night.
Oh, we have a question. Oh, Shamaria said, "Is it because the king knew there was a higher power than him?"
Yes, the king knew that there was a higher power than him. He knew of Yeshaya. Yes, he knew of Yeshaya. How did he know of Yeshaya? Because Cyrus. No, that's later. Sorry, Cyrus was later.
Well, no,
he knew of Yeshaya because of Daniel. Darius was the first king from the transition from Babylon to Persia.
Now,
so he knew it.
My question is, who was this King Darius?
Persia.
So it was was it Xerxes?
That's later.
Because it was 2 or 3 King Darius. I forgot.
Correct.
I knew one was a father and one was a grandson.
Right. No, this is the very first Darius. Okay. And we're gonna try to keep it. We'll try to keep it because there were a couple of Dariuses, there were a couple of Cyruses, there were a couple of Xerxes, there was a couple of Artaxerxes. I'm sorry, there was a couple of Artaxerxes.
But Darius,
they were titles.
Darius means king.
Right, they were titles. Yeah. Cyrus was titles, Darius were titles, Xerxes was titled, Artaxerxes was titled, and I forget who's after Artaxerxes. But they were all titles. We'll get into that more when we go into the later books of the Bible. Now, so Daniel was not guilty of sin against Yeshaya or against Darius, but also he did not sin against either one of them. Darius was not guilty of the decree that he did because he was bamboozled. He would not have normally done that. Okay? Yeshaya did not save Daniel from the lion's den. He saved Daniel in the lion's den. So what does that tell us? That tells us that Yeshaya will not remove you from the trouble that you're in, but he will be there to help you through those problems that you are in. There's a lot of lessons when it comes to this. That's why I chose Daniel 6.
And that's where we mess up at, because people want Yeshaya to remove them from the situation instead of, when we have to walk through it and deal with it, and he's there to help us through. But people don't want to go through. They just want it to like disappear.
Right. Because a lot of when it's talked in Daniel in the lion's den, it said that Yeshaya saved Daniel from the lion's den. That's not true. He did not save him from the lion's den. He saved him while he was in it. Why? To show us that yes, we have problems, but he's not going to pull you out of your problem. He's not going to take you out of your problem. He's going to be there to help you through the problem, which he did with Daniel. Verse 23. Then was the king exceedingly glad for him and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no matter of hurt was found upon him because he believed in his God. Now, my thing is that the seal is taken off. Darius, Daniel, you there? And Daniel says, "Oh, King, live forever." And they're having a conversation while Daniel was still in the lion's den. They still didn't take him up.
I was like, get me out of here, right now.
They still didn't take him up. Darius is, talking down and talking, and Daniel's sitting up, rubbing the lion's mane down. "Oh, King, live forever, and I don't hold nothing against you." Okay, it's time to be taken up because I don't want to risk these lions, opening their mouths. Now, the most important part of this verse is that it says, is why Daniel was not hurt. Why was Daniel not hurt? Why was Daniel not hurt? That's a question. It says in the verse that no. Why was Daniel? Why does the verse say no manner of hurt was on him? Why does it say that?
Because he believed in his power.
He believed in Yeshaya. He had faith.
Yeah.
Faith. Whenever you have these big trials in your life, faith.
You gotta have it. You must. Faith.
The king was overwhelmed, was overjoyed. The king had faith.
Yeah.
Then he released Daniel from the lion's den. Yeshaya protected Daniel in the lion's den. Yeshaya honored Daniel's faith. Why? Because while Daniel was in the problem that he was in, Yeshaya, because of Daniel's faith, kept them covered. And Yeshaya was showing once again his glory. His glory.
But that's what we always tell people when we counsel people and they come to this ministry. Is that if you think that you're not going to deal with your issues and that you're just going to overlook them, you come to the wrong place. Because that's not the kind of power that we serve. With Yeshaya, he have us to, you deal with your life, you walk through, you deal with your situations. And he's there the whole time to help you.
Mm-hmm.
If you start feeling like he's not there, it's because you doubted somewhere. You lost your faith.
Right.
But if you know without a shadow of a doubt that Yeshaya is with you, and my grandmother used to always sing this song when I was growing up. She would say, "Lord, you don't have to move this mountain. Just give me the strength to stand." And I used to say, why would she say that? I'd be like, Lord, remove this from me because I don't want to deal with it. But my grandmother had wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
She knew, even though she couldn't read, she knew that Yeshaya was not going to move her from a fight. She knew that she needed the strength, the faith to stand, to make it through. So she never said, Lord, remove this from me. She just always said, give me the strength to stand.
Right.
And a lot of people don't want to do that.
Verse 24 says, and the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions. Them, their children, and their wives, and the lions had the mastery of them, and break all their bones in pieces, or ever they came at the bottom of the den. So this is a sad scene of those who accused them. They were eaten by the lions. Their families were destroyed also. But this seems cruel, but perhaps it was so that this would never happen again.
That's right.
So these men had spoken their own punishment. They spoken their own punishment against Daniel. The king gave them an opportunity. See, Darius was fair and just. He gave them an opportunity to do what Daniel did. And that leads to another point. Be very mindful on how you treat people. So this is another point from the lion's den. Be very mindful on how you treat people. Because Yeshaya will make it so that how you treat people is how others will treat you.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So they were thrown in the lion's den. They had no God to call on. Those who accused Daniel unjustly were brought to their own ruin, just like the sin of Achan.
Mm-hmm.
That sin was against Yeshaya, Darius, and Daniel. And it cost them, the men, not only their lives, but their family lives also. This is the judgment of Yeshaya.
Don't mess with him.
And this is a very important detail to this particular miracle. This was the judgment of Yeshaya. Just like the sin of Achan, the same thing. These men brought a decree. This decree was against Yeshaya. It was against Darius. It was against Daniel. Because of the fact they said they were jealous. They were jealous of Daniel. Instead of saying, well, maybe I need to do what Daniel's doing, they were jealous of him. Verse 25 says, then King Darius wrote unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell in the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. Now, tremendous effect on Darius. He starts off with peace with all people on the earth. He wants all peace now. Okay? Then in chapter 11 of Daniel 11, we're brought to the end of times. And the end of times connect us with the last chapter, which is speaking of the willful king and the king that's anti-Yeshaya. So we're going to skip over to Daniel chapter 12. We're going to go verses 1 and 2, and then we're going to skip down to 9 through 13. 1 and 2, 9 and 13. So I pray we got a little more insight on the lion's den and how the lion's den, how that shows us even today on how Yeshaya operates. All right, let's go. Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. During the Great Tribulation, there's going to be an unprecedented attack to try to exterminate Israelites. But they will be delivered. And it says, at that time shall Michael stand up for the children of thy people. See that? Michael the Archangel. First of all, Michael is a ministering spirit and is ministering to the believers. Not quite. He's an archangel. He's an archangel over other angels. His ministry is directly under the instructions of Yeshaya. So, we know the time is mentioned. This is at the end of the age of the Gentiles. This points back to Daniel, the 11th chapter. And that's the time where the anti-Yeshaya, people call him the Antichrist, but the anti-Yeshaya is going to prepare for final tribulation, the Pope. During that period, Michael ministers special attention protecting Israel at the end of that Gentile time. We're going to be in the wilderness. Remember, Yeshaya is not going to be in the wilderness. It says that the spirit of Yeshaya is going to be there, but somebody has to be there to protect us.
Because we're going to have no walls.
Well, the no walls come later. But during the time of the 3.5 years, someone has to be there to protect us. That would be Michael.
All right, now Yeshaya.
It's also mentioned in Isaiah 26, Jeremiah 30, and Matthew 24, along in the book of Jude as well. This time of trouble, those whose names are written in the Lamb's book are going to be saved. And we all know that because those are the only ones that's going to make it to the New Jerusalem. If your name is blotted out, no more for you. Verse 2 says, and many of them that slept in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt. So that scripture, if you go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, you'll be able to read on what that's talking about. Right. Where it says, Yeshaya shall descend from heaven with a shout, and the voice of the archangel and the trump of God. The dead in Yeshaya shall rise first. So, brother, I would not have you ignorant concerning them which are asleep. That's in 1 Thessalonians 4. So that comes with 1 Thessalonians 4. Two groups will arise from death concerning many. John 5:28, marvel not at this, for the hour is come in which all that are in the grave shall hear his voice, and shall come forth, and they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that done evil unto the resurrection of the damnation. Two resurrections, one for the righteous and those for the not so righteous. Two types of resurrections are going to happen. Because the people who are in the grave, they have to go somewhere. The ones who are in hell versus the ones who are in Abraham's bosom. They both have to rise up. Matthew 25 says, and these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. Two types of resurrections that are going to happen. Some of them are going to go to the great white throne, and some are going to go to the New Jerusalem. So if we skip down to verse 9, some go to the great white throne, some go to the New Jerusalem. The ones for everlasting punishment, great white throne. The ones that go into life eternal, the New Jerusalem. Because Yashaya said, those are the righteous. Huh? Two types of resurrections that are going to happen. Then in Daniel 12:9 says, and he said, go thy way, Daniel. For the words are closed up and sealed till the end till the time of the end. The words are sealed. That means that it doesn't mean that it's sealed and nobody can understand it. What that means is that there's going to be a apparent time where this generation the generation that I'm speaking of is going to read the book of Daniel, and they're going to get an understanding of the book of Daniel, because right now, for those, it is sealed up until this generation. And by this generation, I mean this generation here. The words of the book are closed and it's sealed up until the end. How is that? Because you get people with the end of the world signs and they're walking around. This is the end of the world. No, it wasn't the end of the world. The words are sealed until a time where a generation is going to read the book of Daniel and understand. That's what it means. It means understanding. It doesn't mean that it's going to be sealed and shh. It means it's closed because it's not time yet. It's time now. That's why it's being opened up to everybody. Verse 10 says, many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So see, that's what it's saying in verse 9. It's closed up. Remember, he says, I come as a thief in the night. Well, he's only going to come to a thief as a thief in the night to those who do wicked. Those who don't do wicked, he's not going to come as a thief in the night because they understand the prophecies that were written in this book. Right. So that's when it says in verse 10 that they shall be made purified. They shall be purified, made of white. Doesn't mean that we're going to turn white. It means that because we are watching, we are waiting for Yashaya, and we're doing what we're supposed to do. It also says, and try. You're going to be tried. And that's what the lion den speaks of. That was a trial. We're all going to have trials if we allow Yashaya to bring us out of those trials. Salvation will come to many Israelites.
Shamaria says, like parables, only certain can understand the dark sayings. Wait, what?
Like parables only. I think I know. I know what she's saying. Yes, like the parables. Um, I don't know if it's a dark saying or not, though. But like the parables. So the wicked are living this life, and they're getting their pleasure now. They're not looking towards eternity.
Mm-mm.
So verse 10 is talking about those who are looking towards eternity with Yeshua. That's the key. John 16:33 says, these things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye shall have peace. In the world they shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. Daniel 12:11 says, from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolation set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,320 days. That means that we all will be blessed. Verse 13 says, but go thou thy way till the end. Be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So soon Daniel is going to die, and he will have rest. Daniel would not live to see the fulfillment of his own prophecies, because his prophecies included Greece, and it included Rome, and it included the end times. He's not going to live to see that. He's going to die. And he did die. But he is promised that he would be resurrected, and then he will receive his reward. It says, thou shalt stand in thy lot. That is your reward if you go through and live through the end of days. You shall see rest. And it says, and stand in thy lot. That means that you are going to receive your reward, which is everlasting life. All those who trust, the crown of life, all those who trust, just like Daniel trusted, will be blessed. Luke 21:36 says, watch ye therefore and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Every person who's lived is going to stand before Yeshua and be judged. Those who did not receive Yeshua as their Lord and Savior will be judged and thrown into everlasting torment. Here, those who are judged to receive their rewards, they will receive everlasting life.
And any people that's here and that's on live stream, we are held accountable. We can't say, "Oh, we didn't know," because the shepherd was only teaching about worldly events and things like that. He's teaching that non-believers, you're going to the lake of fire. Believers, the New Jerusalem.
Right.
So we all are in the hearing, and we are held accountable for it. So you can't go before Yeshua and try to say, "Well, I didn't know." The shepherd never taught that.
Abda. Right. So we should have a more in-depth understanding of the lion's den, and also the end times. That if we just believe in Yeshua and have faith, we'll make it. Next week's not going to be so uplifting. We're going to go to Ezekiel. So next week's not going to be uplifting because it's not. The book of Ezekiel is not an uplifting book. From chapters 1 to 40. Not uplifting at all. chapters 40 to 46 or 48, that's only talking about the temple. That's only talking about the temple. We're not going to really talk about the temple. We're trying to save souls. So with that being said, next week we're going to talk about the book of Ezekiel. We may have a part 1 and part 2 on that one as well. But we'll see how it goes. We want to apologize for the early inconvenience, but you know how it is when you're dealing with technology. So we want to give all the glory and praise to Yashaya, our Savior, for allowing the Holy Spirit to come through and give us knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. If you've enjoyed the lesson, found it educational, like, share, and subscribe. Notification when we go live. We will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. with a lesson on self-improvement.
You sure about that?
Maybe. Tune in and see. Kwam Yasharala.
Kwam Yasharala.